Okay, if you watch Mining Now, I'm your host, Jared Downey, by the way, you'll know mining is a huge focus of ours. So, we're going to be talking about flowers today, which is nice because we've been talking a lot about mining, but it all ties back into mining. That's my teaser for the show. We have Jenny Fortier. She is the CEO of Northern Wildflowers. Jenny, welcome to the show. I honestly can say this is you're the best surprise guest to end a day about mining, talking about flowers. Nice little relief.
Great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I like talking about flowers.
Okay, so um, I'm going to ask a two-part question. When people are walking by your booth at PDAC, what do they think you do, and what do you actually do?
Um, I mean, it often takes them a moment to sort of read all of our stuff and realize that we sell seed because we have these big images of flowers because pictures of seed aren't that interesting or sexy. So often it takes them a minute to realize that we sell seed. And then they often make the connection, with the mine rehab and the reclamation side of
Mhm.
mining, a couple minutes later. Yeah.
Is it mostly reclamation that you're doing, or are you working in like within operating mines as well, like during just sort of operations to sort of as they're moving into different areas, you're doing reclamation on like just recently mined areas?
Yeah, so all of the above. So it just really depends on the project. So some projects we're working with them at the beginning when they're doing initial construction and they've got to stabilize the site where they moved some substrate. We work on closure plans. We work on reclamation. We work on projects that are for orphan mines. So really all of the above. If they have a
Mhm.
need for seed, then we can help them.
So I was going to ask, what is sort of the scale that you're working at? I mean, again, probably when people start watching mine now, the first thing they're not thinking of is planting wildflowers. So I want to sort of get a scope of the scale that you're working within.
Well, we work on all sorts of scales. So we, will work on large projects that are, like several hundreds of hectares or, 10 hectares or maybe five. So it really depends on the site. So we can work on really big projects. And we also work on small projects. We have a retail department as well where we work with home gardeners. So,
Mm.
something as small as like one retail seed package to a bulk mix, for 300 hectares. So we haven't encountered a project yet that was too big or too small, but I mean, there's a first for everything. But yeah.
Um, are these when I saw on your website talking about sort of native seeds to an area? Are you focusing on that? Are you like uh,
Yeah.
are you do you have to make sure that they're native seeds so you're not introducing something new and that sort of stuff? Is that part of what you're offering as well?
Yeah, so we specialize in native seed, which is seed that are endemic to an area, that are, the wild growing varieties that have a relationship with wildlife in a given area. And we serve all of Canada, and now we're moving into the US too. So we really specialize on seed that are native to those two countries. And then in terms of, what's permitted and what isn't, it really depends on a few factors. So um, first, there's a list of species that are just not allowed in any seed mix, that are noxious or problematic. So that's kind of the first level. And then depending on the project, it really depends, if they have a closure plan that's quite sophisticated, where they're really trying to make sure that there's site cover that's similar to what was there before. They might spec a lot of native content, or maybe, they might spec a little bit. So from there, it really depends on the project. But of course, there is the requirement to stabilize a site afterwards. And so that requirement might include natives, or it may, just include like a turf grass mixture. So it really depends on the project.
And now a moment to thank our sponsors. First up, we have Savannah Equipment. Savannah Equipment supplies new and used mining equipment around the world, from placer to underground to ore processing plants. They have gold concentrating tables, trommels, and mineral jigs in stock now to take advantage of the high gold prices. You can visit them at savannahequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. We also have BitService. Since 1965, BitService has been the solution provider for mechanical cutting and material handling in underground mining. Specialists in carbide tipped consumables and rebuilding and optimizing cutting heads for development and production mining. Struggling with conveyor maintenance issues, their team can help with quality conveyor rollers and belt cleaners, improving the efficiency and reliability of your material handling system. Contact them at 306 653 0988 and visit their website at bitservice.ca. Next up, we also have CIM. CIM is the leading membership organization for technical content and creating connections in the mining industry. Mining professionals and students can access a breadth of technical expertise through the CIM Technical Paper Library, the One Mine Digital Repository, the CIM Journal, the CIM Magazine, and attend upcoming CIM webinars. Whether you're working in the field, in the office, or at home, join the community today and learn how they can help you achieve your professional goals. Visit them at cim.org. And next up, we have SolarSet. Introducing the SolarSet Fold, the new foldable frame solar system brings power to your residential and commercial property and can be shipped worldwide. Like all SolarSet products, the SolarSet Fold comes turnkey, pre-assembled, and is easily transported and installed. To learn more, you can visit them at SolarSet Fold, where you will find their full line of amazing solar systems and more at solarset.com. Last but not least, we have Power Zone equipment. When you need a specialized team of world class engineers for your oil and gas, pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with Power Zone. Visit them at powerzone.com. And now let's get back to the interview.
You were saying to me about off air about coated seeds. I had to ask you to repeat a couple. I think I've been doing so many tech interviews lately that I heard code. So
Oh.
that can you clarify what coated seeds are and sort of what that? I think there's some proprietary stuff involved with that as well.
Yeah, so like coating seed is not, a new process or a new technology. Farmers have been coating seed for, a couple hundred years where, you apply a coating of usually, some mineral, maybe it's clay or, lime or whatnot, and that coating might help you do something specific. So maybe it helps to preserve your seed for longer, maybe it increases germination, maybe it helps you to spread the seed better. And so what we've developed, so we specialize in coating natives, which is quite unique. We're the only company in Canada that does that. And we've developed a coating that is really focused on being biodegradable, environmentally friendly, but also making the application of natives easier and their germination more successful. So our coating contains a number of rock dusts, which are, natural occurring biodegradable materials and a plant-based binder. So it's all held together with a plant material. So there's no microplastics or anything like that in our coating. And it helps the seed germinate better because it's this little pocket almost of minerals that is around the seed. And it also helps when you're broadcasting the seed, the equipment that's used really doesn't like a lot of native seed mixes. There's a lot of issues with function of the equipment and broadcasters getting clogged up or not broadcasting accurately. And so we coat it into this nice uniform pellet and it flows through much easier. So it's really, really useful on larger scale projects. And so
Okay.
that's a product that we offer. So we coat our seed, or if we have a client who has seed they collected from their site, and that's part of the plan for their site, it has to be, seed they collected. They'll ship us their seed, we'll coat it and send it back. And so that's a service that we offer that's unique.
Um, do you, what about when these seeds, when they actually come to fruition and they, I'm sorry, I'm definitely not very, very equipped when it comes to vegetation growth, but, so
Yeah,
just correct all the wrong terminology I'm using.
that's okay.
Um, but when the plants actually grow, do they become part of the ecosystem? Like, and I'm maybe I'm
Mhm.
asking a question that doesn't even make sense. I'm talking about like bees
Yeah,
and grazing and all
yeah.
that sort of stuff that then get integrated back into the wildlife.
Yeah, so any seed that's applied on any site, when it germinates, I think that's the word you were searching for. When it germinates,
Wow.
anywhere you are, I talk about seed all day, so don't worry. But when it germinates, whatever you put down will become part of the ecosystem. The question is more, does it have any value to that ecosystem, or is
Right.
it just stabilizing the site? So the nice thing with using natives is that you're putting in species that have relationships with wildlife, so they have a purpose in that site. So we might spec a mix with host plants to various butterfly species. We might spec a mix that has a variety of native grasses that provide a winter food source for birds and small mammals. We might spec a mix that has, the right height to create, the perfect environment for a species at risk. So you're really adding a lot more wildlife value to that site when you're using natives rather than stabilizing it and kind of walking away. Turf grass isn't going to do too much for the ecosystem, but adding in, even if it's a small number of native grasses and native wildflowers, can really transform, the value of a site.
Who ultimately decides on that mixture? Is that you? Do you do a consult on that project, or do they come to you with what they need done based on some sort of environmental assessment, or how's that process?
That process can take different shapes. So one unique thing about us is we have the ecological expertise to make all those recommendations if the client really doesn't know. Sometimes though they do. Sometimes, they know what they want and we'll, put that together for them. Or we'll review it and we'll say, are you sure about this? You said your site's wet. Like we didn't really feel that, this was the best way to do it. What do you think about this? So we have the knowledge where we don't just have like a Canadian mix or an Eastern mix. We have the ability to customize for every
Mm.
single site and every region to make sure it's native, it's going to survive in your conditions and your soil type. And then we even further will refine our mixes if there's a species at risk plan or if there's a particular interest. We have some sites where there's a lot of interest in creating like butterfly habitat, and so we can customize all of those things, and it's usually me that does it. So yeah.
Oh, you're working hand in hand, right on the ground with
Yeah,
them.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I also wanted to ask about supply chain. Again, I'm going to ask questions you'll tell are not someone who's an expert in your field. But I mean, I would assume that a seed, even if it's native to an area, doesn't mean that it necessarily originates from that area. Can you talk a little bit about the supply chain of gathering? I'm assuming you make some of yourselves, but I mean, there's a lot of different types out there. So, how do you sort of source it, and how is that sort of developing internally?
Yeah, so that's one of the ways that we're unique. So we grow our own seeds. So we have a farm just west of Sudbury where we grow, I want to say, 40 some varieties of wildflower seed. And then we also have a crew that wild collects some varieties that don't really take to field growing conditions very well. So we get a lot of seed that way. And then we have a network of contract growers that are spread throughout Canada and a network of contract seed collectors who collect seed for us as well. So we're really working hard to develop a supply chain of seed that is grown and harvested ethically in Canada. Um, and also in the US, we have a lot of growers and suppliers in the US who supply to us. So the difference there is, well, one, you're supporting agriculture closer to home, but
Hmm.
also some of the varieties we deal with, you might have a supplier in Florida who's, selling a seed variety that is also native to Timmins, but there's a huge degree of, genetic difference, even though it's the same species, but the
Oh.
genetics of that, you know, of that population will be really different from what's more native to your site. So we're kind of getting things that are closer to what's genetically around in that site, and so they're better evolved, they're better adapted to that site. Sometimes they even look different if they're coming from really far away. So that's one way that is definitely more beneficial. And when it's from a genetic I'm trying not to use super technical words. When
Oh,
it's
please,
from,
please do. Just use them,
yeah.
and then I will ask you what they mean.
Okay, sure. So when it's from, a genetic stock from an area, it's more likely to survive too. So that's, some of these
Ah,
mixes are really an investment, like they're niche species sometimes, and it's an investment. So when you get something that's closer to origin, it's more likely to do really well on your site and survive. And so that's a major bonus too.
are there risks if you take something from Florida that's the same species, but it's just genetically different for whatever reason? Are there inherent risks other than that may not grow? Obviously, that's would be a huge issue from a business standpoint. But are there other risks involved?
Yeah. So the first thing that's not a risk that we just always assure people is introducing, noxious weeds or things that are invasive, because all of our seed is standards tested. So one of those tests is a purity test. So we have it tested to make sure that there isn't things that we don't want in that seed lot. So that's the first. So that's not an issue. But what can be an issue is that you can actually change like the genetic composition of a site, which, if you've got plants in that site, which is generally the case, you might have disturbed a small area, but there's still a population of those plants around. They've spent, generations adapting to those conditions and
Hmm.
created this little pocket of plants that are, in some ways unique, to that site and have the right genetic conditions to be there. And then you introduce something totally different genetically. So you're changing, the genetics of that site. So you can, end up with hybrids that are really different, that may not be what you want, or you just end up with this pocket of plants that are not well adapted and are not
Hmm.
really prepared to survive in your site. So
Okay, I was wondering about the actual planting, maintenance, that. Now, are you getting involved at that level? Are you working with partners for that? How is that distributed, like on the ground?
so we don't do the service of planting or well, not planting, seeding, and so we don't do that side of things. We just provide the product, and then sort of an advisory or consulting service and how and what and that sort of thing.
Mm.
So we'll work with if the company we're working with has their own crew, we'll work with them to make sure they know what to do and they have the right equipment, or we'll recommend someone that we work with who's well versed in dealing with native seed mixes. So we're not, we don't do the on the ground work.
Okay. I was wondering too about the just that if you could, I mean, I know there's so much NDA stuff in that in the mining sector, so there's a lot of approval that needs to before you can name a specific company. But is there any projects or maybe a project that stands out to you today that maybe on a sort of a larger scale of reclamation that you worked just sort of walk us through what that process was, just to sort of tie this all
Yeah.
together.
Sure. So we just put, I won't name the project because it's still early days, but we just designed a really interesting seed mix for some site closure plans in Northern Ontario. And those sites were interesting because they were really big sites. There was quite a slope on the sites, and there was a varied number of conditions on the site. So we designed mixes that first were, of course, species that were native to that region, and then that were appropriate to the different kind of micro habitats of that site. So there were some wet areas, there were some dry areas, there were some areas that were sandy, some areas that were clay. So we really broke it down into, over this, 10-hectare area, you're going to apply this like dry sand mix. Over this 80-hectare area, you're going to apply this wet you know clay mix. So we did that, but we also added into the design a coating that was specific to that site because there were some areas of the site that had that were more acidic. So we designed a coating because it's our, we can customize the coating too, that contained more hold on. It's going to cut. That contained lime, more lime in it, a higher proportion of lime, so that when you applied that seed to the more acidic site, the seed actually came with its own little pocket of lime to neutralize the little microsite where it was going to rest and germinate. And then we also had some areas of the site that were really, the soil tests showed that the organic matter was really low and the nutrient content was really low. So we changed the mix for the coating on that seed to contain more micronutrients for the seed on that site. So we're able to really zone in on like what's going to be more effective on really specific parameters of different sites.
It's it's quite again, I'm going to say what I said at the beginning of the episode. It's quite interesting because I was very much in a certain mode in the last couple episodes because they're very different companies, but just sort of the similarities. So all of a sudden, it's kind of a breath of fresh air having you on the show. Can you talk a little bit just before we wrap up about the company? I mean, how long has it been around? How it was founded, and your position, and just sort of encapsulate the sort of the inner workings and the history of your company.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, the inner workings. So I started the company about 10 years ago. So my background is as a biologist, is as a field ecologist. And at the time, I was delivering science communication content. I was working at a great science center called Science North in Sudbury. And I had a workshop I was putting on about gardening with native plants and why it's great for pollinators and why it's important for healthy ecosystems. And there was so much interest in the idea of gardening with native plants, but I realized there wasn't any suppliers. So I decided to start growing native plants for sale because I had that knowledge of, how to collect seed, how to identify the plants, how to grow the seed. I was a lot of it I kind of learned as I was going. I wasn't very good at it, but so I did that for a couple of years, and then realized that plants are, they're really hard to ship. And there's this, really short season where you can get them to people where people want them. And for me, it was really about, making sure that I was helping people who were interested to access native plants because it just does wonders for, our pollinators and our ecosystems. And it just, beautifies, the areas around us. So I switched to seeds because seeds were, I could ship them Canada wide, so I could access a much larger market. There's different seasons where seeds are planted, so that was, really more, conducive to running a business around it. So we switched to seeds, and I met my partner, who's, a technical, like a really, tech savvy sort of guy, and so we spent the next few years learning how to like clean and coat seeds and how to treat seeds and how to extract them and all that stuff. So we started offering the coated seed last year. So we kind of spent a year seeing, what our clients thought about it, how it did on site, and we were really happy with it. So we're really putting it out there a lot more this year. And so I own the business with my partner, and we have 9 staff now. We're located in
Wow.
Sudbury. Yeah. Yeah. And we do, I think, really fun stuff. So we have a farm where we grow our crops, we clean seed, we do some wild collecting. We, right now they're doing a little bit of forestry, this week. So, we work with different groups who might want us to do like on-site custom seed collections. So, they get to travel. But yeah, I think it's pretty fun. And you mentioned it was like a breath of fresh air, and that's, we have the benefit of dealing with that every day. Flowers make people happy, whether they're on a
Mhm.
mine site or in a utilities corridor or a backyard, like they just make people happy, which is really fun. So.
Yeah, well, it says something even if you walk onto an operating site and you can see places where they've sort of taken the time to build up something with flowers and that. It
Mhm.
always I always notice that because it does say something about the company because you don't have to. It's one of those
Mhm.
things. I mean, in restoration, you're required to do it, but in some of these sites, you see that they've gone a little bit extra, and it always says something to me about the company anyway. Um, for you, I mean, you, did you have a vision of, I mean, the business has obviously grown, it's expanded. And I can't remember the author's name. There's this great thing about, and my business partner talks about it, is letting the customer demand sort of define your next moves. Um, did you come into this with a very clear vision of what you want to, or did you sort of start, you sort of, you laid out the story like you started small and then it sort of just organically grew, no pun intended. Um,
Mhm.
or did you have a vision of what you wanted to and you still sort of going towards that vision right from the beginning?
It was a bit of both. We knew that like native plants were the way we wanted to go. And then we realized, there was this great opportunity in seed. And then we've let our customers kind of direct us from there of like what their struggles are, what it's like to deal with a challenging site, what they see out there when they look for seed, like what, is available to them and what they find frustrating. And so it's been a bit of both, I guess.
What's the challenge you had? Again, we don't really know each other that well, so I'm just trying to get a that sort of personal side as we wrap up the interview. What's been a challenge over 10 years? That's a long enough time to have the businesses have a business that you run into some rough patches and have lots of wins and all that. What's a
Mhm.
challenge where you really came out of it and thought, okay, now I know how to operate this business in a new way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm even there yet to say like now I've you know, I've surmounted all these challenges. But I mean, over 10 years, we've changed a lot. So the challenges
Mm,
have changed too, right? In the
yeah,
beginning, it was like, okay, like, do we really have something here? And if we do, like, how do we become more efficient at doing it? And how do we scale up? And then it was, how do we get the right people? And what do we have them doing? How does that look? And now it's really getting the product out there widely is really what we're tackling now. And so they keep changing. But I mean, agriculture in Northern Ontario is hard, but we're dealing
right.
with native plants, which thankfully are, pretty easy to grow. So that helps. But I mean, my partner and I were not like, we're not farmers by training or background. And so that's been, definitely a learning curve, but it helps us help our clients because a
Right.
lot of the things that we've learned how to do weren't second nature to us. So but yeah, I mean, the challenges continue. They're always going to be there. So
Yeah, no, it's just always interesting. I mean, a lot of the companies we interview are, I'd say, a percentage of them are we're talking to founders, but quite often we're talking to, companies that have been around 40, 50 years. It's, the
mhm,
CEO, they're maybe the fifth CEO that this
yeah,
company's had. So it's always kind of neat when you
yeah.
get to someone that's actually started it and still leading the operation. Um, last question. So
Mhm.
have you had, being at PDAC, have you had a lot of chance to sort of talk to people? I mean, PDAC hasn't been around for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
So is it nice to sort of get on the ground and sort of get a heartbeat of the industry and talk to more people face to face?
Yeah, so this is our first PDAC, so we're really happy to be
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah, and it's for us, it's been really great. It's been so nice to see people face to face and meet people
Hmm.
face to face. It's like so much of these virtual shows were just, nowhere near, like you just can't compare to just meeting someone and building a relationship. So no, PDAC's been great. It's been a really, I think, like a really, really good show for us. So
Well, thank you for coming on, being we're your our last guest of the day. So thank you for coming on. I wish I was there in person. Hopefully next year we will, and we can sit down and do this face to face. But Jenny, thanks for joining
Mhm.
us, and I wish you all the best. It's kind of a unique thing that you're doing within the industry. So hopefully we can follow that story and have you back on at some point.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been lots of fun.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really can't think of a better way to wrap up this day featuring companies from PDC. So we will see you on the next episode. And if there's here's another example of companies that are outside of what you might first think of when you think of a mining show, but yet they're such an important key to the reclamation side of mining, which is obviously a huge thing, both for the environment, for public perception of mining, and just for the mining industry to sort of take responsibility for the land that we are utilizing. So thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Mining Now.